On today's episode, Chloe and I talk about, are big classes unsafe? Stick around and find out.
Here we are, Raphael.
Here we are, Chloe.
How you going?
Yeah, I'm awesome today. How are you?
Awesome. I'm very happy to be doing this. I'm fighting off a bit of a cold, which I'm not used to. I'm not. We've been so hidden away from people and all these things that I used to, I'd get sick every so often, but like I'm talking every couple of years I'd get hit with, a cold, a bad cold. But now I just haven't built up my resistance to germs now that I hide away in my house most of the time.
I haven't had a cold in, seems like a couple of years now. I had some flu-like symptoms when I got my first shot of AstraZeneca. Apart from that, but that was just my immune system.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm trying to book in for my Pfizer. But we were a little bit hard to come by in Melbourne, so I'm waiting for that. But looking forward to getting that done and dusted.
Yeah, I got my second one coming up in 10 days or so. Looking forward to that.
And then you double dosed.
Yeah, double dose. If you could get a triple, I would.
You're so funny, Raph. My dad was saying the exact same thing yesterday. Dad's like, well, I've got the AstraZeneca. Maybe I'll get the Pfizer too. And I really want – there's another one that hasn't come out yet and he really wants a dose of that one too.
Moderna.
Yeah, he wants that as well. And
he's read – smorgasbord.
Yeah, he does. And he's read all the papers on it and he's read the story about the scientists behind it. He said there's these two incredible female scientists and he said they're just amazing. So he's got all that – he's right into it. He's like, oh yeah, the more the better.
Yeah, that's what I say when it comes to immunisation.
I love it. And when we talk about immunisation, Dad always tells this story that he remembers kids that he went to school with that had polio and they had the effects from polio. So he's like, if you've seen that before, it'd be very hard for you to be anti-vax. But yeah.
Isn't it funny that we're so bad at, as humans, we're so bad at sort of estimating risks, so we're so afraid of shark bites and airplane crashes and masked, baddies jumping out at us in the dark, but we're not afraid of sugary drinks or driving in motor vehicles, which are way more likely to, drinking sugary drinks every day is way more likely to kill you than a shark bite, or an air crash. And yet it's just basically impossible for us to conjure up any kind of fear for those things because they seem so innocuous, whereas sharks are so scary and have such sharp teeth and they're under the murky water.
Yeah, every time I go on an aeroplane, I'm not going to lie, if there's one little bit of turbulence, I honestly think that's it. This is the way I'm dying.
Clutching the armrests.
This is the way I'm dying. Yeah, it's so irrational, but I genuinely think that's and my auntie's watched a lot of, she loves watching Airplane, the crash scene investigation. And she's told me,
think of anything I'd less want to watch.
Well, she's really scared of flying now, and she's told me.
Yes, exactly.
She's told me so many stories about it and things to look out for and listen out for.
Well, if that was me, I'd be like, yeah, no, I don't want to hear that. Thanks.
Yeah. Listen to too
seriously.
Much. Yeah. Anywho, so yeah, I've got way less fear about going and getting my COVID shots. Put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, so, well, now you're down to 3 days a week
I've still got 2 weeks to go.
So do you mind talking about that decision? I mean, I know you announced on social media, didn't you, that you're doing it, so I imagine you're okay to talk about it. Is that cool if we talk about why you wanted to do that?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, there's no big cloak and dagger secret whatever about it. It was literally like I want more work-life balance. It's really and truly as simple as that. Raph, I've worked my absolute ass off for the better part of a decade now, and very intensely for the last 5 years. And I've kind of lived and breathed work, and and it's like I've worked some sort of not so social friendly hours. I work a lot of evenings. I kind of do a combination of evenings and early mornings and weekends, and I was just I was concerned I was heading towards burnout. There were some signs there that, and while I say this is not cloak and dagger, I'm very upfront with those sorts of things, and I'm quite mindful of, tapping into how am I feeling and how am I responding to certain situations and how am I showing up, because I've been in a burnout position before throughout my career, and it's a shitty place to be. And also just, I moved back to Melbourne for a reason. I moved back to Melbourne so I can spend more time with my family and so on. And I just wanted a better work-life balance, and I'm in a lucky position that I have worked really hard and built up my career to a point where I do have that luxury of going to 3 days plus my own business on a Sunday. So it all balances.
Teaching Pilates reformer class.
Yeah, well, I've got two reformer classes happening as of this weekend, because filtering in those that have been through my workshop, and then I've got a rolling 4-week workshop. So if you do my workshop, you can come to my reformer class because it sets you up for success for that. And it's
and we'll link
great.
to that in the show notes.
Well, thank you, Raph. So really, it just came down to wanting to also see what ushers into my life when there's more space. Whatever that may be, who knows? Maybe Chloe's dating life will ramp back up now. And what it also means is that when I do show up to work, that sounds weird, but how I show up to work, here we go, this is a better way to put it. How I show up to work will always be my absolute, most excitable best. And even when I'm at my worst, Raph, I'm still pretty excitable and at a pretty high standard, but I have noticed in myself that when I'm bad, I'm good, but when I'm good, I'm awesome. Does that work? It's like the girl that had the little curl, that rhyme. But so I think it's really great. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm really happy that you're happy, because I can sense it ever since you made that decision a few weeks back. I've just, even in your text messages that you send me or posts you put in Slack or whatever, I can just sense there's more lightness and you're, feeling more joy. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and they've done lots of studies. There's lots of studies that have been done on countries that have transitioned to 4-day work weeks and so on.
Those crazy Icelanders.
Yeah, those crazy Icelanders. And what they've actually found, this is my understanding of the research, is that they have found actually that the workers are so much more productive in those 4 days. And I have even, because at the moment I've transitioned to 4 days with Breathe for the last couple of weeks, and I'm sure you've noticed as well, my productivity in the days that I am at work and my input and my insight and my energy levels are I've felt through the roof. So I can't imagine how productive I'm going to be, how much even more productive I'm going to be when I go to 3 days. So, yeah.
You just get more and more done.
More and more done. And and yesterday I had this beautiful day where I got to spend time with my family, and I swung on a swing with my little nephew, and it's great. So
it is great.
So yay. So I'm feeling good.
That's great, because one of the reasons that you moved down to Melbourne was to be with your family. That was really important. And now you actually...
I actually get to literally do that, and it's really special. And, I think about when we talk and learn so much about biopsychosocial, and really that social aspect and the social construct and all of that, I don't think I was tapping into so much in my life when I was in Sydney. And I've noticed the difference of that, tapping into that and into that family connection and family ties, and the different generations and learning from them. You know, I had great chats with my stepmom yesterday just about how we've changed as we've grown, how she's changed, how I've changed, how our relationship has matured, and that we really enjoy each other's company. And yeah, it's really, we're like, yeah, tell you what, she's like, you never, the fantastic thing about getting older, Chloe, is you never stop learning. You keep developing and you just keep getting better. And I'm like, it's so true. So yeah, that's where I'm at. It's pretty lovely.
That is awesome.
Pretty lovely.
And, you know, as you obviously know, but most of our listeners probably don't, one of our, you know, at Breathe Education, we have 7 values that we have as our shared values. And, you know, number 1 is we prioritise self-care. And for years I've, you know, thought of that as like, oh, we make time to exercise, or we get to bed early, or, you know, we drink lots of water, or whatever it might be. But actually, you know, recently, as you know, because you've been involved in these conversations, but we've actually reframed that to like I can't remember the exact words, but it's along the lines of basically I manage my time and energy so that I can show up at my best.
Yeah.
You know? And so I do what I need to do to bring my A game, and that's not like psyching myself up on, you know, 14 coffees and 2 hours sleep. That's like, you know, doing whatever I need to do to show up at my best. And I can see that you're doing that. So value shout out to you.
Yay, I finally got a value shout out. I've been waiting for one. You know, like I pump my own little wings and give myself value shout outs.
You do. And there's nothing wrong with pumping up your own tyres.
But, you know, it's nice to get one from the CEO. Thanks, Raph. If you could just pop that in Slack afterwards, that would be nice.
Okay, well, you could just link to this episode.
Here I am linking into my value shout out, and everyone's like, shut up, Chloe.
It's at 16 minutes and 48 seconds, by the way. Although we did press record a little bit before we started actually talking, so it might be a bit earlier in the episode.
Thanks, Raph. And let's give a value shout out to all our listeners for we use science and data. We innovate.
We innovate and improve.
And improve. I see that in our listeners. I see that in the DMs that we're getting on the daily, where it's like, hey, I'm thinking about things differently thanks to these episodes.
And you know what? Like a little while ago, I put out just a little 2-minute episode that was inviting people, if they're instructors in the US or Canada, North America, to jump on a Zoom with me. And there's a link in the show notes. And hey, public service announcement, if you're an instructor and you're in the Canada or the US, or even if you're in the UK or Europe, I'd love to talk with you. So we'll put a link in the show notes, and just you book a Zoom call with me. I'd just like to find out like what's going on for you over there. What's the industry like? What's your experience of being an instructor in your location like? I really just want to understand your story. So anyway, I've been talking to a bunch of people. I've probably talked to like 14 or 15 people in the last 3 weeks. You know, from all, you know, the way from Texas up to Alberta in Canada, I think. And it's been awesome to meet, you know, some of our listeners and hear their stories. And I've heard that so many times that, you know, that people have changed their thinking or opened their minds. And a lot of the times, you know, what I've also heard is like, yeah, a lot of that stuff that you guys talk about on the podcast, I was already kind of thinking that, but I didn't want to say it because, you know, I was sort of worried everyone would laugh at me or whatever. But it's like, I think a lot of our listeners are already out there kind of, you know, inquisitive, questioning things. Yeah.
Totally. Oh, our listeners are freaking awesome. And please keep sending me DMs. They really, like, I send them straight to Raph as well. I share them with Raph as well in the best possible way. So to celebrate celebrate, and Raph and I get really, really excited about it.
We do.
I often get quite teary. And, I just want to say thank you to you. Often it's weird how our listeners have this way of sending me a sweet message just when I need to hear it or something. I don't know. You're all just so lovely. So if you ever think, no, I'm not going to send that. I'm not going to send it.
No, fuck it.
Send it. The world needs more of that. And it really, every time I get a direct message like that, it really helps me. It just validates what we're doing and how we're feeling about it, and that this is worthwhile and important to.
And you know what else would be super awesome that would make us feel great? If you left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts.
The reviews have slowed down, I've got to say.
Write something for us,
Yeah, we're sitting at 90. I do check the reviews. We've been sitting at 95 reviews for a while. So if we could pump it up, and so if you're loving it, if you could give us a review, and also if you're loving the podcast, if you could help us multiply by sharing it potentially at the studio that you're working at, sharing it with your instructor mates, if you're in a Pilates group.
Instagram.
Share that really helps us multiply our voice as well. So, yeah. Cool. Wow. Is this the episode? I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
I feel like we could just
I'd
love to just have a chat.
Well, you know what? While we're talking about this, another thing that and if you're listening to this, maybe you're sitting there going, yeah, fucking duh. But, another thing that a lot of people have said to me, I'd say, the majority of people I've spoken to in the last few weeks have said to me is that they, something that they really value about the podcast is that it's kind of real and raw and no bullshit, and it's not scripted, and it's honest. It's kind of just, it's like if we were just having a conversation and no one was listening, this is what we'd say. But it's just people get to listen in. So
this is what the podcast is. Yeah. So
yeah. And now from a word from our sponsors. No, just joking.
And thank you to the listener who reached out and gave me a shout out for my personality. That was really nice too. In counteraction to the time that I really annoyed that grumpy person because I giggle too much. So thanks.
You've got an awesome personality, Chloe.
Oh, well, thanks, Raph. So do you.
Thanks. I think we
could be why we're friends.
In that regard. Yeah. I think we complement each other, like we're like not as in compliment, like we just did. Like, hey, you've got an awesome personality. Oh, hey, so do you. Like, but complement, like we enhance each other's
compliment.
Because you're kind of super excitable, and
I'm pretty excitable. I'm kind of like a puppy,
super sociable, and and I'm kind of more level,
it works well together.
Yeah.
Okay. So where are we going? Where are we going to today? What is the journey we're going on?
You know what? This is something that's come out of these conversations that I've been having. And if you're out there and you're curious, want to have a chat, or feel like you've got something to say, I'd love to talk to you. So jump in the show notes, tap on there, book a Zoom call. It's nothing for sale. It's just you and me having a chat.
Yeah,
I want to
Raph
understand
loves
what's
a chat.
Yeah. So anyway, something that's coming out of these conversations is a lot of, I'm asking people about, where they're teaching, what they're doing, how they're teaching, how many hours they teach, all that kind of stuff. And people say, oh, yeah, I teach groups. And I'm like, okay, so tell me about that. And they're like, oh, yeah, there's 5 reformers at the studio, or there's 6 reformers at the studio. And to me, that was very surprising, because in Australia, when we say group reformer, I immediately think like 12, 14, 20.
I think 15 plus, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had a studio for a decade. We had 18 reformers. About 3 or 4 years in, we opened a second studio as well that had 20 reformers in it. Virgin Active, which is a massive premium health club chain here in Australia, they have like 2 studios per club, each of which has like 20 plus reformers in the space. Like I think in Sydney, one's got 24, one's got 26 or something like that.
Shout out to Alice Scott. Shout out to Alice Scott,
Shout out
who
to
manages
Alice Bibby Scott. Yeah.
The Pilates for Virgin in Sydney. We love Alice. And Alice, the fantastic instructors being hired.
And it's an amazing club too. It's like really
Virgin.
great club.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
And then KX, which is the biggest franchise in Australia, I think I'm probably a little bit off with my numbers, but they've got around 55 or 60 plus franchises, which if you're in the US, I guess that doesn't sound like a lot, but bear in mind Australia is less than 1/10 of the size of the US. So, Australia, the whole of Australia has half the population of California. So, they're a pretty big brand in Australia. Every one of their studios has, I think, 14, I think is their number of reformers. And so this is, and then there are countless like individual little studios or little chains of 4 or 5 that have this same model. And so I would say, most clubs or most studios in Australia, if they only had 10 reformers, you'd kind of scratch your head and go, how come you've got so few reformers in your space?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few that have to, like I'm thinking Good Times, etc.
Yeah.
But we've spoken about, and I potentially we'll talk about this in this episode, that ultimately more reformers as well equals more revenue. So yay. And then you can pay your instructors more and everyone wins.
Well, yeah. And so that's exactly why I wanted to talk about this, because it really surprised me when I was talking to all these people in North America and they're telling me, oh yeah, I teach group reformer, I teach 5, I teach 6, because to me that was real new and unexpected. And I think that the reason it really, I feel quite strongly I want to talk about this today is because that, as you say, it directly impacts how much revenue you generate in the studio, which directly impacts exactly how much you can afford to pay your instructors, right? So if you're an instructor and you're working in a studio with 5 reformers and you're charging $20, the studio's charging $20 per session. I'm just making it nice round numbers to make it easy to do the math, right? Well, if you have a full class, you've got $100 of revenue, right? But on average, you might have a full class from time to time, but even if all your classes are booked out and waitlisted, they're not all going to be full because someone always gets sick or their kids have to go to the dentist or whatever, and so the meeting goes over or whatever. So you're going to average, if you've got 5 reformers in your space, you're probably going to average 4 people, on average over the month or the quarter. And so that's $80 revenue per session. And so, of course, the studio has to pay their rent, they have to pay their marketing, insurance, they have to pay the lease on the equipment, they have to pay blah, 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 all the other stuff that they have to pay, right? And so how much? And then, of course, the studio owner wants to not do it for free. They want to take some money out of that as well. And so what's left at the end is going to be like a third or less, a quarter of that after they've paid all their bills and whatever. So, out of $80, they can afford to pay you like $20, $25, right? And that's not them, the studio owner being greedy. That's the studio owner paying you like basically more than they're getting paid for that session. Whereas if you've got that same room and you've got 10 reformers, or holy crap, imagine if we put 15 reformers in that room, all of a sudden, even if it's only 80% full, like we said, you've still got 12 people in there at $20 each, which is $240, of which 1/3 is $80, right? So all of a sudden, what they can afford to pay you goes up from $25 to $80.
Well, yeah. So, lucky you if you're getting paid $80. But I do remember when I was working at a studio in Sydney, and it was a newer studio, and they started off with a room with only 8 reformers in it, but they were paying, for instance, I was at the time getting paid $65, and I was just thinking, I can't see how this is, and sure enough, it wasn't adding up.
Sure enough, yeah.
So pretty soon they realised they're losing money on a room with just 8 reformers, so they converted the bar room, which was a larger room, and they squeezed 11 in there. So then it was starting to make more sense. But then they were running the 2 rooms together. It was all the bottom line is and I think Laura was saying she did that. Laura Sagers, when we were interviewing her, she did that, didn't she, for a while?
Yeah.
She had, I think, 2 rooms running.
Yeah.
And then realised that actually doesn't make it better because the smaller room, you're still losing money on it if you're paying your instructor. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the luxury that you have as a studio owner when you have more reformers, assuming that you can fill the room, obviously. Yeah. But that, when we had 18 and 20, we used to pay our instructors, our entry-level instructors, our brand new grads, fresh off the press, they got $60 a session, and they're more experienced instructors. Yeah, we used to pay $1 a minute. We paid $1.20 a minute for more senior instructors. This was back in the day in 2007 up until 2016 when I sold the studio.
Wow.
But that's when you have 18 paying customers in the room.
Yeah.
There's more money to go around.
Do you know, Raph? Do you know? Just a little segue here. You probably do know that I turned away from coming and doing an audition for Breathe Wellbeing because I was too scared about the audition. Isn't that funny? Baby Chloe was too scared. Yeah, the opportunity. I can't remember who reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you want to come audition? There's positions going at Breathe Wellbeing."
This was the studio that I ran with some other partners up until 2016. Yeah,
and I was going to have to audition in front of you and a couple of other bigwigs that
Nicole, maybe
probably Nicole. Yeah. There was a few. There was a whole heap of names that terrified me. And I just remember going, oh, fuck it. I can't deal with that. And
isn't that crazy?
Isn't that weird? And now, I mean, gosh, and I remember that Laurie, who had only just shout out Laurie,
shout out to Laurie. Yeah,
had only
still working there.
Yes, and Laurie. So this is what I'm saying. I want to take this moment because I don't want our listeners or new grads or whatever to turn down an opportunity like I did because I was too scared. Laurie, and I remember Laurie, who had literally just graduated from her teacher training. So I'd been teaching for a few years. And I was too nervous to go for this audition. She had just graduated and went, oh, fuck it, I'll go for the audition. And I remember thinking, and Laurie, and she got the job. And, of course, she's a gun and just went on to continually, get all the jobs she wanted because she's fantastic. And also she had the guts to do the thing. And here I was, God knows why, I was just too scared. Isn't that weird?
Huh, that is so weird.
If I could give my past self a little tap on the shoulder and go, don't be a bloody idiot, just go in there and do it. Do the thing.
Yeah, but you know what? And I agree with you, and that's the advice I would give my younger self if I'd made, that. But I think it's all turned out for the best in the end, and if you're
all on your trajectory, and it's all of that. And as our dear friend Jenna Zaffino would say, it's not a race. You're exactly where you need to be.
And you went off
right
and taught
now.
at this place and that place and the other place, and you gained lots of other diverse experience and went and moved to Sydney and, you had a lot of other learning experiences and
I did. I think I would have liked teaching at Breathe Wellbeing though. I feel like I would have enjoyed it.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
I would have enjoyed it. Yeah. And I still think, in hindsight, don't let your fear hold you back.
Nah.
What's the worst that could have happened? You could have gone, that was a bit of a shit. That wasn't your best work, Chloe.
But here's the thing, and so this isn't for you, Chloe, because you already know this, but this is for everyone listening who might be in the same boat that you were in all those years ago, is that all right, so you've got this studio that you really look up to and you think, oh, that's an awesome studio. If only one day I could be worthy. I'd really put you
on a pedestal, Yeah,
it was like freaking Garth and Wayne in fucking Wayne's World. We're not worthy. So
yeah.
So you put this studio up on a pedestal and you think, if only one day, I could be worthy to work there, right? But the thing is, the awesome studios are desperate for instructors just like the non-awesome studios. In fact, they're probably more desperate because they've got higher standards, right? They don't want to just let anyone work there. So the awesome studios, they're super picky and they're like, no, we've had a few applicants, but we're not satisfied with any of them because we've got really high standards. So they're desperate. They're all working too many shifts and they can't get anyone to cover and do subs. And so it's like, if you show up and you've got a freaking awesome attitude and you know how to teach a class, like, man, that you will be like welcomed with open arms at that place that you idolise and you think you'll never be worthy. It's like, if you think that about them, it shows that you care so much and that you're such a good values fit with what they stand for. I can tell you probably will get the job there.
Yeah. And also audition, it's always a great learning experience, and the more you do, the less nervous you get and all of those things. But I totally was just like, breathe well-being, no, like all my heroes work there and I can't, like, how could I work there? So do the thing.
Isn't that funny?
There you go. You didn't know that. You didn't know that I turned that down.
No.
How funny. See, you learn something about me every day, Raph. You think you know all the things and I just surprise you.
I don't think I know all the things.
About me. Most. You know a lot.
I do. I know a couple of things. But I'm not at the stage where I'm starting to roll my eyes yet. We're like, oh, you're not telling that story again.
It'll get there, don't worry.
Like those old married couples on the start of When Harry Met Sally, where they like complete each other's sentences.
It was like my nan, bless, I got the stories, she would think she was telling it for the first time again. It was like, let me repeat this story back to you, Nan.
Yeah. Well, I think we've all had an experience like that.
Although there were stories that I'd just get her to repeat on, like the one where she met Pa just after World War II. I actually would say, Nan, can you tell me that story? Nan, tell me that. It became like a bedtime story. I was like, tell me that story, Nan. That's the story I want. Yeah.
But
so
it doesn't end up that doesn't end up being the one that she volunteers to tell you. It's more like the one that she had, some little trivial incident that stuck in her memory from 30 years ago.
Yeah,
that she wants to tell you. That's what I've got. My parents are a bit like that as well. They sometimes tell me the same story without realising it.
It's funny, but I feel like they're the stories we'll miss when we don't get those stories anymore. Like I miss Nan's stories now. But okay, so we've got. We're talking about group studios, large group studios, and kind of like it seems that in Australia, I believe the large group studio is the norm. It's, there is a large, and when I say group, I'm more often than not referring to reformer. I think reformer is more, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong, is more popular. Even though Matt's freaking awesome, and I think there's been a resurgence of, we know Matt is the new black since pivoting online, etc., because a lot more people don't have reformers at home, but they certainly have their mat. So there has been a newfound love for mat Pilates, but then we also hear just as many stories. It's like, oh my God, thank God the studios have opened back up again and we can get back on the reformer.
Reformer's fun, let's face it.
Yeah,
it's fun.
And if we... Here we are, dear listeners. If we read a passage in Caged Lion, there's your push-up. If we read a passage in Caged Lion where John Howard Steele recounts, and I've talked about this in earlier podcast episodes, that everyone was chomping at the bit in Joe's gym to get themselves on that reformer, and they would be like eyeing it off. And then,
sometimes if you were unlucky, you had to start on the Cadillac.
You'd rush and pop your sweat towel, bam, onto the reformer to bags it as the moment someone else got off. So, it's always been the sexy thing, right? It's the sexy, shiny thing. And reformers are awesome. So group reformer is huge in Australia. And I don't think anyone would bat an eyelid at a reformer studio that had, 15 plus reformers in it. It's the norm.
I would say you'd struggle to find one that's got fewer. Like they're less common.
Correct, right? So, but what we're seeing in the States, and
I've also talked to a few people in the UK, and this seems to be the norm in the UK as well.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting because okay, it's probably just the circles that I run in. I thought there was quite a bit of group in.
Well, and I haven't talked to everyone in the UK. Obviously, they've got a population of 60 million. I've talked to like 5 of them, so,
Yeah. Because isn't that, I thought it was, I think probably what skewed my bias on that too is when Aaron, the founder of KX, talks about his story. He was a fitness instructor. He went to England. And then came across this.
Well, UK listeners, correct us. Tell us the facts. Like, book in a time in the notes and come and talk to me.
And he brought that, and we'd love to hear your accents as well. I love an English accent. And he brought back a particular group fitness reformer model from England, and that's what KX was based on. That's my understanding of it.
Well, that's his origin story, yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's loop back then. Okay. So it's not, okay, let's say it's maybe not a big thing in England. We know it definitely doesn't seem to be a big thing in the States, whilst there are some like Club Pilates, etc. So so in your discussions with all our fantastic US mates that you've been having, what's the primary concerns or if it's a concern around a group reformer setting? Why do they think it potentially isn't a thing, shouldn't be a thing? What are the blockers? Yeah,
well, I think the two things that I'm picking up, and I didn't ask people like why do you only have 5? Because it would be like them just like, well, what other number would you have? Like it's like when I say group, like, oh, how many in the group? Oh, 5. It's like, it's not like, oh, there's only 5.
Right.
That they don't see that as a small number. That's just the number.
Yeah.
Right. So I didn't, maybe I should have. And if the next person I talk to, maybe I will drill down into it a little bit more. But I've talked to people, interestingly, in other contexts where, and seen a lot of talk on forums. Like I'm a member of multiple Facebook groups about Pilates, in the US, in Australia, in UK, in Europe, Asia, and, a lot of studio owner groups as well. And, I try and contribute something if I've got anything I feel I can add to the conversation. And, often it's around sort of business or marketing type things. People are asking like, oh, how do I get more money in my studio? How do I get more clients? How do I, whatever. And so, quite a few times people say those questions and I'm like, oh, well, how many reformers do you have? And they're like, I've got 6. I'm like, oh, why not put in another 6, or another 12, and they're like aghast, shock, horror. Wouldn't that be unsafe? I'm committed to quality. I don't want to, dilute the quality of what I do for people. I see myself as an artisan, and I don't want to turn into a sausage factory. Basically, I'm paraphrasing.
Okay.
No one literally said that, but yeah. And so I certainly respect that, and I can understand, and I can even identify with the mentality of crafting something fine with great care and attention to detail, and really wanting to work with individuals and with really small groups of people. Like I think that's an admirable thing, but I don't think it's a great business strategy. I think it's a pretty fucking terrible business strategy, TBH. So, yeah, so there's those two things, the quality and the safety, I think.
Yeah, so what's interesting because my bread and butter, particularly prior to becoming a trainer of trainers, trainer of new teachers, etc.
Well, hold on, now you're a trainer of trainers of trainers.
Yeah, I know. Could you see I had a bit of a brain I was like, I don't really know how to define myself here because I do a bit of all the things. But anyway.
You're a trainer cubed. Trainer to the power of 3.
That's cool. I like that. Excellent. I wasn't great at maths, but that's probably no surprise. But anywho, my bread and butter was really group reformer. That's how I made my living. That's how I cemented my name as in the industry. That's how all of those things. That's how I built my career. Group reformer. Okay.
And how many in the group?
Well, apart from the studio where they started with 8, which was, I'm talking 15
and then
plus.
pretty soon they couldn't afford to pay you.
Correct. Exactly. Right? So here's what's really interesting is that when I had, I guess, a perception earlier on that things like a clinical, what might fall into clinical Pilates, working more with your clients with pain. This is before I knew much about pain, Raph. This is before I knew much about anything, okay? I was pretty sure that in the group setting, this shouldn't really be people that have injuries or this or that. I can't really look after them in a group setting, okay? It's got to be more for the person that's like, let's go, right? Then as I think when I first did my diploma with you, and I started learning about biopsychosocial and more about pain and more about rehab and more about persisting pain, and really started to delve into that and went further afield as well, and, did courses with Ben Cormack and Adam Meekins and Greg Lehman and all of the things, and then integrated my clinical reasoning and critical reasoning, etc., into a group setting. What I actually found was my clients who were presenting with identifying as having chronic pain. Now, I say chronic pain because that's a common lexicon. I don't like using it. It's a bit of a trigger word for me, Raph. I prefer persisting pain. Raph's just like, shut up, Chloe. But words matter. So
like SMR.
SMR. Yeah, that's our safe word. But like when I annoy Raph, if you hear him say SMR,
that's my safe word.
Self-myofascial release, because I really gave him a hard time about that for a while. But the crux of my story is that my clients who were coming with the chronic pain or this or that, and what I found is that in a group setting, because I did do some one-on-ones and private stuff, what I found is that I was actually having more success getting my clients who had persisting pain, etc., and the client that identified with, it's my bad back, it's my dicky back, it's my dicky knee, I can't do this, I can't do that, that's hurting my back. Actually, in a group setting, I was able to move them towards fearless movement and empowerment within their bodies and general movement, and get them moving way more successfully than what I was doing in a one-on-one setting, where the one-on-one setting was this focus on, they wanted me to micromanage what was happening for them, and everything that they were tapping into. Oh no, in that position I can feel my back. In that position, no, I can feel my neck.
It heightens their focus on one-on-one doesn't have to, but have to heighten their focus on the problem, on the pain, on the symptom.
Whereas actually in the group setting, and I'll never forget this moment. I might have spoken about it and sorry if I'm becoming like my nan, I might have spoken about this story on the podcast before. It's potentially possible. And Raph, you can pick me up if you can remember if I've spoken about it before. But my client who was coming to a group setting, who had really persistent pain in her back and hip, no red flags, she'd seen a physio, et cetera, she had twin toddlers, and she basically what she wanted to get back to was being able to play fearlessly with her twins. Just being able to bend over. Have I told this story before?
Not that I can recall.
Oh my God, yay. This is a great story then. Oh, let's settle in. So she wasn't able to just fearlessly pick them up. She felt she actually couldn't play with them. And you can imagine how that was impacting. Again, I want to reiterate that there was no red flags. She had seen a healthcare provider, etc. And anyway, she started with me in a group reformer setting, quite guarded with her movements, etc. And I didn't tap into, I didn't micromanage in that. I picked her up when she was doing, a fearless movement or this or that, and etc. Cut a long story short, maybe could have been something like 6 weeks in, and I had just been quietly noticing, you notice your client who might have been very guarded in their movements, slowly becoming less guarded, being buoyed along by the group, buoyed along in the, enjoying it. And she pulled me aside one day at reception prior to class, and she said, hey, I can play with my kids again. And and it still makes me really emotional. And I remember I got goosebumps, and I just said, and she said, I can play with my kids again. Thanks.
That's awesome.
And I was just like, wow. And I hadn't done anything. Except empower her in her body, not micromanage her movements, not zone in on discomfort, because we all know if you've got something that hurts a bit and you exercise, well, it's probably going to hurt a bit. You're probably going to have discomfort. And in fact, checking in with your client all the time, how does that feel in your back? How does that feel in your neck? How does your knee feel in that position? Actually is just the same as saying, hey, Raph, how's that headache feeling?
Yeah.
Or like you and I having a
like
great time
wiggling
now.
Wiggling that wobbly tooth.
Right? And you go, hey, Chloe, how's you said you identified that you were, fighting off a bit of a cold when we started. How's that feeling? Well, to be honest, I'd forgotten about it until this moment where I'm like, actually, that feels a bit gross. So you ask someone to think about their pain, you micromanage their pain and discomfort, they're going to think about it. So that's my, right?
And that's not to say that all, that is what people are doing in small groups all the time or anything. But
no.
But I think the big, important takeaway there is you can have profound effects on people in a large group without doing anything very particular with them, by just creating, like a gardener, you create the environment where they can flourish, and then they just do the rest. Like, you don't have to hover over them and tell them, which muscle to turn on and when to breathe and when to move their little finger. Mm-hmm. You can just create an environment where they can figure it out. And
I've definitely spoken about this before, so I won't go into detail with it again. But teaching online for me has been a huge one with that as well, because my clients are on mute. I mean this with all due respect, but my clients are on mute. So instead of going, Chloe, can you give me a modification for this or that? They're just self-modifying.
Yeah, they figure it out.
They figure it out themselves. Yeah. And I've seen my clients come along in leaps and bounds in regards to their personal practice, etc., without the hover, without the micromanagement. And that's not to say that I don't give a fuck. That's not to say that I'm not absolutely present in every single class I teach. It doesn't mean that my eyes aren't everywhere when I teach, because they absolutely are. If I'm going to ask clients, a whole room full of clients, to step off a reformer, right, I'm going to think about things like, are all the props out of the way, right? Is everyone stepping in the same direction so the person behind and the person in front don't step into each other? So these are the considerations I'm taking into account when I am managing a large group setting, right? But it's not, Joe Blow over here has got a bit of a sore back and Jane over here has got a bit of a sore wrist, and does that make sense?
And that's what we mean by fearless movement, right? You're not fearful about what's going to happen if you don't micromanage those people. You just think, they're strong, they'll be fine,
And I'm there. If they want a modification, I'm there. I'm there. Absolutely, that's part of my role, for sure. But when we're thinking about a group setting and we're thinking about safety in a group setting, when I think safety in a group setting, I'm thinking that I am conducting, how, does everyone pop their foot bars down now? When everyone pops their foot bars up, I am verbalizing, hey, we've moved our foot bar. Give it a whack, give it a wiggle for me. Please ensure it's locked in place.
Because those are the danger points, right? It's actually there are multiple studies on injury risk and what causes injuries in fitness classes, and the vast majority of injuries are people tripping over, dropping things on themselves, like leaving the equipment half dismantled, people tripping over. Like, it's the vast majority of injuries aren't people exercising wrong. It's people hurting themselves on the equipment, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the things I am very particular about. And in fact, my group classes, I had them so well trained that if one of my clients stepped up to carriage instead of platform first, without me saying a word, they just step back down and step back up the way I liked it done. And I'd be like, thank you, well done. So I am particularly particular about that, because I am used to conducting, like a conductor, a large room full of people on machinery. Yeah. So there are certain things that I put in place in regards to that.
Yeah. Well, do you mind if I indulge myself in reading a couple of studies that I found on this?
Oh, love you to.
Well, because I wanted to check the facts before we had this conversation. And so I put into Google Scholar, which is their search engine for academic research papers. It's just scholar.google.com. A whole bunch of search strings around risk of injury and group exercise and systematic review and terms like that. And I came across a few things. And one was this survey done by the National Electronic Injury Surveillance System in the US in 2016 about workout-related emergency room visits right across the United States in 2016. And they categorised them by without equipment versus with equipment. And so, the most dangerous activity you can do is running. And the least dangerous activity you could do is sit-ups.
So sorry, is this running in a gym setting?
No, this was just running outdoors, not on a treadmill.
Okay.
So this 36% of all injuries were running related. Right. Whereas we go down to general exercise, hiking, walking, yoga, push-ups, squats, aerobics, jumping jacks. And by the time we get right down to the bottom of the list, sit-ups, 0.4%, so less than 0.5% of all injuries were related to people doing sit-ups. Right. And so that was with the no equipment category. Right. And then we have the equipment category. And the number one, cause of injury or situation, where people injure themselves with equipment is running on a treadmill.
I'm sorry to giggle. I just feel like I know everyone's mind's gone to all of those videos. We've all seen the videos. Right. There's always a video of someone coming off a treadmill, right? Yeah. And then there's those really awesome videos of people like dancing on treadmills and stuff.
Yeah. I wish I could do that. Then we have down, so that's about 36% again of all equipment-related injuries are on treadmills. Mm-hmm. And then your general exercise machines. So these are like your bench press machines and your rowing machines and all of the other kind of machines that you have at the gym. Then there's stationary bikes at 10%, jump ropes. Imagine
stationary
people
bikes at 10%. What do you reckon's happening? People going over there?
I can't imagine, but maybe they take their feet off and their feet get caught in the pedal. I don't know, stuff
going really
like that,
fast.
I'm guessing. Yeah,
okay.
Jump rope. I can imagine people doing it in bare feet and whacking it on their toes.
Oh, jump! No, I've got no
tripping over, falling on their face.
The amount of almost
hitting someone else with it.
Falls I've had on a jump rope are huge. I totally get that one.
Elliptical trainers, pull-up bars, medicine balls. Lots of traumatic injuries with people, hit other people with the medicine ball and stuff like that.
Oh my God.
Weights are only 4% of injuries, and most of those people dropping the weights on themselves.
Yeah, the old drop it on the toe situation.
Box jumps, you can imagine people don't quite make it up onto the box. They trip over, fall on their face.
I've actually got a really funny fear about. I'm not a fearless mover with jumping up onto anything. I love my teeth, and I'm precious about my face. And I just do not trust myself to land it. And I'm like, for me, not worth it. I'm happy doing other stuff.
Fair enough.
Not worth it. I'm not wrecking my teeth.
And the lowest number of injuries were to do with yoga mats. So people tripping over yoga mats or, leaving yoga mats, in the middle of the doorway or whatever, someone trips over it. But that was only 2.3% of all injuries, right?
2.3 though is more than sit-ups. Okay, so people are tripping over yoga mats.
Yeah.
Right, okay, gotcha.
Right. But guess what was 0.0%? Pilates.
Shut the front door.
Precisely 0 hospital emergency room visits in the year 2016 right across all of North America, 360 million or 370 million people all doing Pilates madly, okay? 0 emergency room visits in 2016.
Wow.
Right? According to the US National Electronic Injury Surveillance Survey. So Pilates is really fucking safe, I'm sorry to say. It's really, really. Now, that's despite 650 Club Pilates franchises, all with 12 reformers. Right, pumping through,
Plus
50, 60, 70 classes.
They've got a cool setup where you have the reformer and then you've got the wonder chair at the end, and you get to do a combo of both.
Yeah.
I love a combo of chair and reformer.
That's even like, despite those crazy, whatever it is, Laban people and the people on the big row former, it's the reformer with the...
Legree?
Yeah, Legree and the mega former.
Yeah.
And like all of those crazy things that people do, zero. Right, 0 injuries on all of that combined. Now, that's not saying someone didn't pull a muscle or something like that at some point, but no one rocked up to the emergency room, right? Not one, right? Whereas we had some number of people who tripped over yoga mats and had to go to the emergency room.
I didn't have to go to the emergency room. Actually, I kept queuing. I was teaching class, and all the boxes used to sit at the end of all the carriages, right? And so all the carriages were like one line down one wall, one line down the other. This is when I worked for KX. And the boxes sat at the end, and I was like, yeah, come on, everyone. And I was walking backwards. This is how you hurt yourself in a reformer studio, everyone. So I'm walking backwards. The music's pumping. I'm like yelling out the cues. Next minute, it was like something out of a cartoon, Raph. It was actually so funny. I went up and over the box and landed on my bum on the other side, and you just hear this collective from all the clients, and I come up from behind the box. I go, I'm fine, keep going. And I got myself up and I went, okay, Chloe, maybe don't walk backwards when there's a whole heap of props in your way. But yeah.
I wish I'd been a fly on the wall to see that.
It was pretty funny. My cueing was almost seamless. I missed one beat as I went over the box, landed on my bum, and then it was just like, you are not stopping, class, keep going. I'm fine. That was probably my only proper fall in a reformer studio.
Well, I've seen a couple of injuries in my 15 plus years around Pilates, and they've all been people falling off a machine or tripping over a machine.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of falls into springs with hands in straps and whatnot. Yeah. But I mean, you can help mitigate that. Well, okay, everyone. Yeah. Sit on your butts. Great, excellent. Sit cross-legged, grab your straps, let's go. So there are ways around that, and picking your exercise selection appropriate to the class level and the experience of those members that you're teaching can help mitigate those things, right? And we teach our students that really, really well. We send our students out really clear on how to program for a beginner, how to layer up for an open level class, how to facilitate early success in regards to layers and exercise selection, and how to help mitigate things like fall risks. Yep. And so it's not to say that you can't always mitigate it, because it's like anything. We're humans, and we're on a moving something, and Yeah.
Well, and here's the thing though, that exercise, I looked up I found a few other studies on, what are the risks of exercise in general, and it turns out that, and this is not going to surprise anyone, that basically the more exercise you do, the more chance you're going to injure yourself exercising. If you run 100 kilometres a week, you're more likely to get a running injury than if you don't run. But here's the thing: the risk of getting the risk of dying is way bigger if you don't exercise, right? So if you don't run at all or don't do any cardio, your risk of having a heart attack, a stroke, getting diabetes, etc., is like tenfold more than it's not tenfold, it's probably like double the risk, okay, according to the literature, than if you regularly do cardio. And so even though if you do run a lot, you have, your risk of getting an injury goes from 0.0% to 0.2%, right? But your risk of having a heart attack drops by half. So it's like, it's a no-brainer. You know, of course there are risks involved in any activity. And if we want to completely avoid risk, we would lie and, wrap ourselves in cotton wool in a flotation tank. But that would actually paradoxically not be safe, because our muscles and bones and tendons would atrophy, our heart and cardiovascular system would become weak and, ineffective, and we would die young from, lifestyle diseases, basically. So there's no zero risk there's no zero risk option, right? It's pick your poison, and the risks of exercising are way less than the risks of not exercising. And I know I don't have to convince you of that, because I know you're as big an advocate of that as I am. But whilst yes, sure, there is a risk, right? There's not. It's non-zero, right? But even though in 2016 there was 0 emergency room admissions from Pilates class, but the last thing I looked up was, so I tried to tease out, like, within a given activity. So if you're doing aerobics, or if you're doing CrossFit, or if you're doing Pilates or whatever, like, is it safer in a smaller group, right? Whatever the risk profile of that particular activity, is it more safe if you've got more supervision, right? Is what I tried to tease out. And there's actually no literature on that directly, right? So there's no literature that looks at, like, we looked at large aerobics classes versus small aerobics classes and tried to figure out who got injured. But there's lots of it in the rehabilitation sphere. So in lots and lots of rehabilitation trials, we look at, say, for low back pain, we look at, supervised individualized physiotherapy versus home exercise program, unsupervised. Right? And there's heaps of that literature in the shoulder, in the low back, in neck pain, in knee pain, all these different areas. And what we consistently see is unsupervised generic home exercise programs are equally effective as supervised, individualized, tailored, practitioner-led one-on-one exercise programs, right? So total one-on-one focus from an allied health professional for someone with neck pain or osteoarthritis of the knee or shoulder impingement, right? Versus just giving that person a photocopied list of exercises to go and do at home and come back in 6 weeks. What we find is no difference across the board, pretty much. And it extends even further. I found some literature on stroke rehab and patients with heart failure and intermittent claudication, which is a sign of a heart condition, and again looking at inpatient intensive cardio rehab, supervised by exercise physiologists and cardiologists, versus a sheet of exercises to do at home, right? And what they find is no difference, right? It's as if you do some exercise, you're going to get benefit. And it doesn't matter if that exercise, even in people who've had a freaking heart attack, right? If there's anyone at high risk in exercise, it's those people, right? And it turns out that if they just given some clear, simple instructions on what to do at home, and they go do it, it's just as good as them doing it, with all of the machines that go beep, and people hovering over them telling what to do. So I think, if we take it to that extreme and it makes no difference, right, whether it's supervised or totally unsupervised, well, surely in something like Pilates, which is about 1 billion times safer than cardiac rehab from the get-go, right, the difference between 5 people and 15 people in the room is utterly insignificant. It's just not, it's negligible, right? It's not different in terms of safety.
So here we go. So group classes are more profitable. Tick. And they're not more dangerous than smaller groups.
There's 2 things I want to say to round this out. And, the first one is that I don't want to give the impression that I'm saying to people, if you're doing only 5 people in your class, that's a bad thing, or you should stop doing it, or, it's like everyone should do, what they feel is best.
Yeah, and what they enjoy doing and what sets that sets their passion on fire, sure.
If you like working with 5 people and the idea of working with 10 people doesn't turn you on, well, fucking don't work with 10 people, Work with 5 people and I'll give you a massive high five if we ever meet, I don't want people to feel like that we're saying, what you're doing is wrong.
Oh,
right?
Gosh, no.
But if you're working with 5 people in your class and you're also scratching your head going, gee, how come I can't afford to pay my instructors? No one wants to work for me, right? Or if you're teaching at a studio and you're an instructor and there's only 5 reformers in the room and you're going, these buggers, why don't they pay me more? Well, there's your problem right there. If you want to teach only 5 people, you're going to have to charge them $40 each or $45 each, per client in order to make a decent profit and pay the instructor well. Or you're going to have to acknowledge that this is not a very profitable activity and I'm happy with not really making much money doing this. I'm doing it for love, not for money, and I'm happy to accept that, and that's something I willingly choose. So that's the first point. The second point is, and I didn't get this from anyone I spoke to who doesn't work at Club Pilates, right? But I did get it from everyone I spoke to who does work at Club Pilates. And what they all said was some version of, I feel like other people in the Pilates industry look down at Club Pilates as kind of a lesser, less pure or less, something, like it's less than, it's not quote real Pilates, or it's a sausage
Belinda's
factory.
Belinda's going to be triggered by that word.
It's and I can't remember the exact words that people used, right? And but I saw this in Australia when I was on the committee of the Pilates Alliance of Australasia, when maybe 4 years ago or so, when KX was really exploding here. At first, there was a lot of fear, a lot of catastrophizing about KX and seeing it as like, it's quote just fitness Pilates, or
there was a big. I remember seeing this big thread, and I was just so turned off by it that I just was like, come on, where someone in the industry, someone prominent in the industry actually here in Australia, was saying that it should all be categorized. So if hashtag not real Pilates, right? So if you're KX, it should be.
That is such bullshit.
Yes. I'm not a huge fan. So if it was, this particular person was lobbying for it to be categorized as fitness Pilates or this or that, and it had to have its category. Well, it can't. Well, I mean, this comes down to this potential snobbery around lineage and
it's just exercise.
Well, we're not going to, and we're not going to, and well, that's right. That's right. And hey, the bottom line is our clients don't give a fuck.
The clients don't care. The clients don't care.
And by that I mean our clients want to do what they enjoy doing. If your client enjoys going to KX or Club Pilates or to a classical studio or to this or to that, good. Because guess what? They're exercising. Right? They're moving. They're getting social stuff. They're getting all the don't be an idiot.
So we say yes to classical Pilates. We say yes to contemporary Pilates. We say yes to fitness Pilates.
We say yes to all of it, except we don't say yes to Pilates snobbery.
Nah.
We don't say yes to that at all.
No.
But we absolutely say yes to all the things, because bloody hell, come on. Come on.
Come on, people.
Come on.
Just because you like doing it one way, why does everyone else have to do it that way?
That's right. So if you want to teach small group, teach small group. No, if you want to teach large group, teach large group.
Yeah. So all right. So that was a nice soapbox moment. Thanks for sharing it with me.
Thanks for coming to our TED Talk.
So I guess, something that I'm really keen, that's something I'm really keen to bring out into the open as an elephant, that I think, probably most people in industry are aware of that at some level, whether they have that view themselves or not. They're aware that that's a view that people have. That I think we need to just let go of that bullshit. Like 12 people in a room is fucking fine. It's not
Joseph
a problem.
Pilates, by the way, everyone, Joe's been dead since like something like 64. Move on, and he is the ultimate cage lion. He wanted everyone, there better be
Everyone.
push-ups. He wanted everyone in the world doing Pilates, doing his exercises, right? But he caged himself in so much by not sharing the work and being so restrictive about who could teach it, etc. That
But,
really all it did was
you can easily go up on YouTube, and I know you've seen this, Chloe, but if you're listening to this, you can just go to YouTube and type in Joseph Pilates Jacob's pillow, right? There's footage there of Joseph himself teaching groups of 20, right? Joseph Pilates teaching groups of 20. And he wrote a fucking book for people to do it by themselves at home, unsupervised.
This is very
For
true,
fuck's sake.
Raph. This is very true. This is yeah.
He wrote a book.
Yeah.
That's what, in the old days, apps were called books. He wrote an app so you can do your own fucking Pilates at home just by yourself.
Apps are called books. I love that. Yeah. But I think he'd be stoked that it's, maybe look, who knows? I don't know. I didn't know him. I don't even know if him and I would have got on. He had some weird ways, but surely the fact that Pilates is a household name now, really. It's a household name. Very rarely now do I get Pilates, that's just like yoga. That seems to be, most people like if I say Pilates.
I used to get that a few years ago.
They're like, yay, awesome. Oh, I tried this class. Oh, I've been meaning to try that. Oh, I'm getting friends who are messaging saying, hey, my partner, she's hiring a reformer and I'm going to try it too. This looks awesome. It's really becoming this household name.
Yeah.
And that's what he wanted it to be, didn't he?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. And that's what we're here for. We're here to lift the industry up.
What's the alternate? What's the alternate is that it all gets trademarked like what bloody Sean was trying to do. And if him and Romana had have won that court case, well, Pilates would have been Pilates as we know it, dead. We would all be doing something else.
TM.
Pilates
Pilates
TM.
TM.
He probably has put a TM after it, to be honest. But
So I, just to round out this last point, if you work at Club Pilates, hold your chin up, hold your head high. You're a queen, you're a king, you're awesome. Club Pilates is awesome.
You are valid.
You're not less than. You're a real one, right? What you do is real Pilates. And if you're not at Club Pilates, give your friend who works at Club Pilates a high five and tell them how awesome they are today and how you respect what they do, because they're bringing people into Pilates and moving them around. And that's fucking awesome. And they're doing a great job of it because they've got 650 franchises, so the people fucking love it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, I guess what's the summary? The summary is, if you like teaching, 5 people in a room, great. If you like teaching 3 people, 1 person in a room, great. More power to you. Love you. You're awesome. But if you're teaching only a few people in the room like that and you're kind of stressed about money, well, there's your problem right there. And so we each have a choice, and there's no right or wrong to this choice, but we have a choice about how many clients we want to see, what we want to charge those clients. And those choices determine how much we make as instructors, financially, and what we can afford to pay our staff if we're studio owners. And so if you're an instructor and you're looking for a job and you walk into the studio and they've only got 5 reformers in the room, well, there's going to be a pretty low cap on how much you can earn at that studio, And if you're a studio owner and you're starting up a studio and you're dreaming about, this small, micro boutique space where everything's, bespoke and all. That's beautiful, but just know that means that puts a very low limit on what you can afford to pay your staff. And so you're not going to be able to pay the big bucks to get the greatest instructors. You're going to have to get new kids and train them up, and as soon as they get trained up, they're going to leave and go somewhere that pays them twice as much, And that's the choice that you make if you choose to have 5 reformers in the room and only charge $20 or whatever. I mean, whatever your local rate is. But, if you want to have 5 reformers in the room and earn good money, you've got to charge more. And if you don't want to charge more, well, you've got to have more reformers in the room, because that's the laws of mathematics. And whatever choice you make, you can make a profound difference for your clients for the better. You can do that with 5 people in the room. You can do it with 50 people in the room. They're like, I'm sure we've all been to, say, a concert or some other big event, a training, that was life-changing for us, right? Where we were one of, 50,000 people in the audience. Imagine if you were in the front row to see Prince or something, like, while he was still alive. Like something was like, you can make a massive, profound difference to people. I bet if you're listening to this, well, if this isn't your first rodeo, if you've listened to more than one Pilates Elephants, if you're lucky, if we're lucky, if we're doing our job right, we've made a change for you. You've had some kind of change. I can't tell you the number of people who DM us and tell us you guys have changed the way I think, the way I do Pilates, the way I teach Pilates. We've never met you, most of you, right? Talk about unsupervised. Fuck. Like we get 1,500 downloads per episode in the first 24 hours. We're not looking at you doing it.
Think about, it's funny because we think that's all got to be supervised, and then there's things like Pilates, like I need
Pilates anytime.
Pilates anytime, right?
Yeah.
Every instructor's happy to go on and learn new tips and tricks from Pilates anytime without it being live. It's 100% recorded. So I think there's a bit of a potential double standard there. And, there's ways that you can mitigate tripping hazards, etc., in a large studio setting, and we advocate that you should do that.
Yeah,
you absolutely
100%.
Shouldn't have props laying around on the floor. You absolutely should get people to bang their foot bars and ensure they're in place. Totally.
And just watch out with the standing arms in straps work as well.
Standing or kneeling hands in straps. Exactly. And watch out for those pesky boxes if you're, grooving and moving as you walk backwards queuing.
Don't walk backwards down the studio whilst queuing.
Lesson learned. You'll usually only do it once. But, good chat.
Good talk, Chloe. Yeah.
Loved it. Thanks, Raph.
You did awesome considering you're feeling a bit under the weather.
Yeah, I'll crash later, but I'm all right for the moment. Must be that coffee boosting me through. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Raph.
Yeah, thanks, Chloe. See ya.